You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the 12th Doctor story, The Girl Who Died. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Father Corey couldn't be with us today, but we'll manage without him this time. Folks, be sure to write a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can write reviews, and share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow this great community of listeners. Another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy will be Let's Science. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science. So we are talking about this 12th Doctor story called The Girl Who Died. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this episode?
This week, the 12th Doctor and Clara land in the Middle Ages and are captured by Vikings. When they get to their village, the Doctor pretends to be Odin, only for another Odin to show up as a vision in the sky. The other Odin promises all the best warriors in the village that they will feast with him in Valhalla and beams them up. He also beams up Clara and a young woman named Ashildr, who have parts of the Doctor's broken sonic sunglasses. On board his ship, False Odin kills all the warriors to extract their adrenaline and testosterone, which he drinks. Based on the technology in the sonic sunglasses, Clara almost convinces him to leave, but Ashildr is aghast at his slaughter of the warriors and declares war on him in the name of her village. False Odin agrees and sets the time for battle for the next day, 10 of his warriors versus all of her village. And he beams Clara and Ashildr back. The Doctor has identified False Odin's species as the Mire, one of the mightiest warrior races. He tells the villagers to run and hide for a week, but they won't. Reluctantly, the Doctor decides to stay and train them in battle. He knows it's hopeless, but at least they will all die with Viking honor. Clara convinces him that this isn't enough, and he needs to start thinking about how to win. Eventually, the Doctor comes up with a plan using electric eels to shock the Mire warriors, and using one of their helmets to broadcast false imagery into their heads. Ashildr is a good storyteller, so the Doctor puts the Mire helmet on her, and she broadcasts the image of them being attacked by a dragon into the Mire helmet network. This forces them to flee, except for False Odin. Once he's alone, the Doctor reveals the deception to False Odin, including how the dragon image was based on a puppet. And he now has hilarious video of them being intimidated by a puppet. He tells False Odin to leave and never come back unless he wants the video revealed to the galaxy. Afterwards, it turns out that using the helmet killed Ashildr, but the Doctor decides to save her, and using a Mire medical kit, he makes her functionally immortal. And we close the episode with the Doctor wondering if he's made a terrible mistake by giving her immortality. Spoilers, sweetie, the Doctor has made a terrible mistake. The end.
The end, yes. So that's going to be an interesting exploration of itself. Just to kind of point out for fans of Game of Thrones, the big guest star here is Maisie Williams as Ashildr.
Yeah, so this is not my favorite episode by a long shot. I have never watched Game of Thrones. I understand some of it is good, some of it is not family friendly, and some of it is supposed to be lame.
Much of it is family friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know this actress. This stunt casting completely falls flat for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any investment in this character. She's very, she's the big problem in this episode. If she kept her mouth shut, Clara would have saved the day in Act 2.
Yeah.
And so she's the cause of the problem here. She's not a magically compelling character, and having this episode wrapped up around her just because she's famous on another show, unless you're a fan of her in that other show, it's like, so what? This is very unimpressive.
I mean, Doctor Who, even like in the 12th Doctor's time, they've done a lot of stunt casting. They've brought in people who are famous and other things. I remember the throw a mummy from the train, and that sort of stuff. What's it called?
The
Mummy
on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I always have the funny title in my head. But they had a famed comic actor there, and it worked, even if I didn't know who the guy was. But here, if I remove my knowledge of Maisie Williams, she's just kind of meh. She's kind of annoying in a sense. Because the character just kind of stands out, and because I know the character from another show, it kind of drags a little bit of the baggage with her because she's only ever done one other big thing as far as I know that I'm aware of, and so that character identity kind of drags along with the actress and kind of lands in the middle of this, and it just doesn't. I think you're right. It just doesn't. There's something wrong, and I'm not. I don't know if I can put my finger on it completely, but there's something wrong in that.
One sign of that may be the fact that if you look, this episode has a co-writing credit. It's co-written by some first guy and then Stephen Moffat. Now, that could be because Ashildr is going to be a recurring character who's going to pop up in at least 2 more episodes this season. And so maybe Stephen Moffat, did a bunch of work on this just to set that up. But also co-writing credits with the showrunner frequently means this script had problems and the showrunner had to step in to try to fix it. So it could be a sign that the episode was even worse when they got the script, and Stephen Moffat served as script doctor and did so much work that it went beyond his normal role as a producer with his producer edit, and so he had to be given screenwriting credit.
I suppose that's also. I kind of feel like the whole Ashildr's future stuff, plus the Doctor's face stuff, which we'll get to, in a minute. That felt like Moffat. That had his fingerprints all over both of those things.
Yeah.
I was going to say the fingerprints of Moffat is that the Ashildr doesn't die, like the dying fake out. That's a thing that he keeps doing.
I think that's somewhat overblown. Lots of people do that, and so and the Ashildr death comes out of nowhere. It is completely not set up. Before the Doctor puts the helmet on her, there is no clue that this helmet is going to be fatal to her. There's absolutely zero setup for that. And there continues to be no setup until they pull the helmet off of her, and all of a sudden, oh no, she's dead. And this just comes out of nowhere. So I think that's a flaw in the writing. Also, loads of people save somebody at the last minute to give us a happy ending. So I don't think that's unique to Stephen Moffat.
Well, I feel like the fact that it comes out of nowhere was him kind of that might be where he added in that's his bit. Like, the story probably ended originally with, and I'm just speculating, but with Ashildr doing the puppet thing and the Mire go away and we're all happy and yay. And because they wanted to do this further stuff with this character down the road in these other episodes, they added in this whole bit about the Doctor's self-identity and, what happens to Ashildr, her death, her resurrection, and all that stuff. And that to me kind of feels like that was imposed on this story.
Yeah.
And
it was.
And that would have been imposed probably by the showrunner.
Oh, of course, by Stephen Moffat. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. All that stuff is him. I just don't think that. I think we rag on him a little too much when it comes to his not killing people.
Yeah, I think it's a constant flaw in his writing, is because it eventually sucks the drama out of death because you don't believe it. And it's just like, so that when it actually occurs, you're like, yeah, but they're not really dead. They'll come back at some point. And if you constantly go to that well, I think it's a flaw if you constantly go to the well of the death fake out. And
welcome to comic books and superhero movies, Dom. It's the 21st century. Nobody's dead unless the body sits there on camera for 6 minutes. And even then, there are ways to bring them back.
This is kind of why I'm a little bit down on that stuff these days myself. So we have this story of Vikings, which is, it does this terrible.
It's incredibly historically inaccurate when it comes to Vikings,
yes.
Which is also something I don't like about it.
The horned helmets,
for a start,
instance.
the horned helmets. Vikings never wore helmets with horns on them. That is something that comes from 19th century opera, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just incredibly historically inaccurate. And we've actually had, historically accurate TV series about Vikings now. So the audience knows they didn't wear those things. And why you would want to stick all these actors in horned helmets is beyond me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of comedic. I mean, it was that. Yeah, I mean, because the TV show Vikings was airing as this was on, and I don't know that's especially accurate, but it's certainly more accurate than this ever was. And the idea that these adult males living in the Viking village would not have any warrior capability. I mean, from my understanding, and it's limited, but pretty much like every adult male who is healthy, whether he was a farmer or a blacksmith, was also potentially a Viking raider.
Well, I can't speak to. That may or may not be true, but there's definitely a problem with the Viking identity in this, which is that, and I don't have a problem with a lot of the villagers are just not gung-ho warriors. That's fine. But they won't identify themselves as Vikings. Viking was a job.
Yeah.
The term means something like raider or pirate. And so the doctor's giving us his just go and hide for a week speech, which is eminently sensible. Just if you know they're going to come and try to stomp your village, well, leave. And wait a while and come back and see if the village is still there. And if it is, you can resume your life. And if it's not, then you can rebuild it. But that's an eminently sensible plan. And the remaining men of the village rebel and reject that solution. And one of them yells, the doctor has just pointed out that they are farmers and fishermen and web designers. And he says, maybe not that last one. And one of them says, we are Vikings. And it's like, okay, you're a farmer or a fisherman, and you just declared that you as a group are pirates. This is not dialogue that would happen in the real world. The Vikings the culture the Vikings came from did not identify themselves as Vikings any more than our culture, which has cab drivers, identifies itself as, we are cab drivers, even if you're a web designer. There's a logical disconnect there. They referred to them, the settlers in, like, for example, England, who came from Scandinavia, would refer to themselves as Ostmen, meaning men from the east. They also were Scandinavians in the north, so they were called Norsemen and Norse, and on the Danish peninsula they were called Danes. But they didn't call themselves Vikings. That's just wrong.
Right. It's more modern imposition, the horned helmets, the name, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and that kind of, I mean, it's clearly they're going for a comedic vibe in this one, and then having the drama at the end. But clearly we wanted to see the doctor in a situation sort of like, I'm trying to think of. What was the old Western where they had, I mean, they've done this several times in Doctor Who, frankly, the modern Who, where the doctor shows up in a town and he has to train them to fight. I mean,
Seven Samurai.
The Seven, that's right. That's the one I was reaching for. So, yeah, like you have this, and I think they did that in a town called Mercy, too, didn't they?
Which is another really horrible episode with some stunt casting, since it has, what's his name from Stargate in it.
Right, exactly. So it's not, I don't know. There's some funny bits, but it kind of takes the story down a bit as overall. So
also cutting the Meyer some slack for the fact that they're really fish aliens. Watching false Odin drink a vial of adrenaline and testosterone is just icky.
Yeah.
And that's not how, if you need extra adrenaline and testosterone as a human, that's not how you get it. It's not administered orally.
Well, also the idea that, you've got to like mush the entire person down Well, there's much easier methods. You could just extract it from their glands, I mean, just like, it's kind of I mean, it's just done for
or
shock effect.
Culture it in non-human animals the way we do here on Earth.
Yeah. But they wanted to have this shocking, depersonalization, dehumanization thing. So they, so what are the big themes in this one to me are, the big one is the idea of identity. Who am I? Who are we? That sort of idea. And the Doctor has this revelation at one point where he says, the reason I chose this face, and it's sort of retconning why Peter Capaldi was also a Roman in the 10th Doctor's time, escaping from Pompeii, as well as the 12th Doctor. And so the whole idea of why do I share this face? And he kind of goes to this point, well, because it was a reminder to myself to always just save somebody. The thing that Donna, came to him with was, just save one, save anybody.
Yeah, you don't have to save everybody, but save somebody. Right.
And so it was sort of the 10th Doctor's, implanted this in his own mind, this idea of to remember, to at least save somebody. And that's what motivates him to go run and save Ashildr, which is kind of interesting that, I mean, if the Meyer first aid kits were there, they could have used that for, I'm not sure why that was such a big deal for him to use this thing. Like, oh, yeah, we have this technology that the Meyer left behind that could save somebody who got hurt or died.
Well, so they don't fully pull the reveal on this in this episode, but I mean, they do mention it, that the Doctor thinks that by using the Meyer kit, he's made her functionally immortal, and that could create a tsunami in time. That's one of the things we do that is set up early on, is as time travelers, we tread light. We don't try to it's okay to make little waves and ripples, but we don't want to make tsunamis in time. And by creating an immortal human being, he may have done that. And so that's part of why he has the big speech before he uses the Meyer first aid kit, which is really it's a little chip. He puts it on her forehead and it merges into her. That if anybody, he's talking to the Time Lords, he says, if anybody's listening to me, you can go to hell. Because I'm going to do this. And what he's doing there is he's accepting the risk of creating a time tsunami.
Right. And in fact, early in the episode, when he first sees Ashildr, when he and Clara are brought to the village, he does have this sort of premonition about her, or as he calls it, remembering her in the wrong direction, which is apparently a Time Lord, occupational hazard, where he sees her and recognizes her as a significant person in his life. That's in the future, probably, which she will be.
And that's his explanation for what for premonitions,
right?
But all of this character, she's there, but other than causing an early problem where she brings the wrath of the Meyer down on her own village, she's not really playing a significant role until very late in the story. And then all of a sudden we get a bunch of narrated characteristics about her to talk about her identity as well, about how she's always felt different. And as soon as they say that, it's like, here we go again with the I've always felt different thing in modern movies and TV. And, the girls thought she was a boy and the boys thought she was a girl, and she's always been different and she's always known that, but at least here she's loved and blah, blah, blah. It's like paint by numbers, dialogue, and characterization. How many times have I seen this in other contexts?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That is, I mean, you see that all the time, especially in modern Who, is this idea of like, I don't fit in. Who am I? And the 13th Doctor, it was particularly egregious because it ended up being so sappy all the time because she would gush over them. At least with the 12th Doctor, he doesn't gush. I
do like the way, though, that he has confidence in Clara now. Because when she first gets back from the Meyer, he's like, oh, yeah, I looked them up, and it says they're very efficient, and they do their thing and move on, so I assume you've convinced them to move on.
Right.
And he just has trust that she's taken care of it, and she would have if it hadn't been for Ashildr messing it up.
She totally would have solved the problem at that moment. Yeah, and in fact, earlier she complains that the doctor is always talking about what he can and can't do, but has never explained the rules to her, which is a bit of a writing premonition of, the dilemma that he'll face at the end. But also it's a bit of a foretaste of Face the Raven, when she has to, when the rules apply to her, when there's a thing he can't do, and we break the rules for her. So it's kind of an interesting line that's kind of loaded with future meaning, which you don't understand until it's fulfilled in later episodes, I think.
It's something they're building towards, though, yeah.
Yeah. The Doctor does make a crack against religion again, where when fake Odin shows up, he kind of says, which it was funny that he tried to pretend to be Odin, and then the Monty Python-esque Odin in the cloud.
Yeah, it's apparently not against the Doctor's programming to impersonate a deity.
Right. But he does make a crack against religion. What's the one thing the gods never do? Gods never show up, which...
And that's just betrays a modern sensibility of the writer, because if you read ancient literature, gods were showing up all the time. People were used to that.
Right.
It wasn't considered this never happens.
Right. I mean, they would have heard stories that, Odin showed up in the next village. Why they would have no reason to not believe that. I mean, so it would be an unconvincing argument.
We also have some religion slaps from false Odin, who, when Clara and Ashildr are talking to him, and Clara points out he's a false deity as well, he says, "What is God? It's just the cattle's name for their god, or for
their farmer,
for their farmer."
Yeah.
And what is heaven but the gilded door of the abattoir? And it's like, okay, dude, I understand where you're going there, but there are answers to this kind of throwaway macho atheist quipping.
Right. It seems so very clever, doesn't it? But it's not. One thing I did appreciate is that for once the stakes are small. It's this one village. It's not the entire planet, the entire universe, or whatever. So they did kind of confine themselves to this village. I mean, there was a little bit of a, we've brought the attention of the mire to Earth, and that's a bad thing, and implying that maybe it'd be a problem for all of Earth. But really, it's this village is what's at stake here.
I also like there's a line or a sequence of dialogue I particularly like when the Doctor's trying to convince them to leave, and he after the guy has said has given his "We Are Vikings" speech, the Doctor says, "Okay, so what are you going to do? Raise crops at them?" and one of the village men says, "If necessary." and another says, "I think he was being sarcastic."
Right. Yes, that I did laugh at that one. Another bit of anachronism here is the electric eels.
Oh, I was going to say, where electric eels come from? South America.
Yep.
Okay, how do maybe the Vikings got as far as Newfoundland, Canada, or maybe even down to Massachusetts or something? How do they have electric eels from the Amazon basin?
Those Vikings went everywhere.
Yeah, that was just one more history. They just didn't care.
They didn't care. They didn't think anyone would notice, or maybe they would. Maybe their new fans do notice such things, but they didn't care. As you often point out, under Stephen Moffat, it's science fantasy. So yeah,
science fairy tale. Yeah.
Yes.
On the other hand, I do like when they start to execute the plan. The Myers show up and everybody's dancing in the barn. And it's like, oh, I call stuff very similar to this at private parties for beginners. I mean, they're doing elbow swings, they're doing two-hand sachets, and that's about all they're doing is elbow swings and two-hand sachets. And only the Doctor and Clara do the sachet. Everybody else is just doing elbow swings. and in a big line, not even like along a circle, but just in a line. So this is like one of the simplest dances I've ever seen, and I would go a little more complex even for beginners.
Yeah.
But the Meyer come in and they said, we agreed to meet for battle, and the doctor said, oh yeah, we canceled that. We thought we'd have a party instead. Join us in the party.
That should confuse them for a bit.
Yeah.
I did also like the fact that when he did the video of them being afraid of the puppet, you know, the first deep fake, by the way, video.
Well, it's actually the opposite of a deep fake. He's recording what really happened. What they were seeing was the deep fake.
That's true. And but he overlaid it with the yakety sax.
Yeah.
The music. I did appreciate that.
Or the Benny Hill theme, as they call it in England.
That's right. So it's like, why? Yeah. There are also just little plot questions like, why don't the Meyer just blast them from the sky instead of run away? And,
well, I think they have this kind of dueling thing in their culture of we've been personally challenged, so we need to meet you on the same level, and kick your butts on that level rather than nuke you from space.
Right. Yeah, the honor, there's like an honor thing going on here. I noticed that we don't ever get an actual full-on view of what the Meyer actually look like. We sort of get this 3/4 from behind implication that the Meyer are kind of really ugly when Odin drops his mask, his hollow mask.
We get that earlier, but later during the battle, they do show us when they rip the helmet, and they've got these kind of fish alien heads.
That's right. I forgot about that. I must have been distracted during that scene. So yes, that's true. We do get that view of them. I mean, and they're pretty ugly from human standards. So intimidating. So before
another little self-indulgent bit of writing they have is when the doctor is doing the reveal to false Odin, and he because now one of the things is all of the other Meyer are wearing helmets that cover both of their eyes. False Odin has a mechanical eye patch that covers one of his eyes, but not the other. So he can apparently see through his organic eye. And that apparently is why he can tell there's a Viking puppet ship thing, dragon masthead ship puppet thing in front of him where the other Vikings can't. And so they're all seeing a dragon attacking them, which he's presumably seeing too through his mechanical eye. But he also, and that's why he's yelling to them, to his companions, telling them they're cowards and things like that, because he's apparently perceiving part of what's really happening.
Right.
And then when the doctor's doing the reveal afterwards, he says, "You've just seen the world through the eyes of a storyteller." And I'm going, okay, metafictional self-reference by the writers. Writers are all powerful. They can tell us stories that do amazing things to us. Okay. Yeah. When have I heard that before? It's like, this is another cliched writing trope.
When writers extol themselves.
Yeah.
that is a bit much. Before the battle, Ashildr has this conversation, I think, with the doctor, where she says, she has nowhere to go, like with this village. This place is her identity, and then the doctor swears that you'll never have to leave it, which is that foreshadowing of the big problem that, in fact, the exact opposite is going to happen. She will have to leave, and she will lose her identity. That's an interesting thing that comes. And the doctor, once again, makes a promise he can't keep, which is often a problem with the doctor.
I also was kind of, putting myself in the doctor's place when she makes that declaration about, I can't leave here because this is my place. At least I'm accepted here. And it's like, okay, how did you get accepted here? Well, I was born here. Okay, so you showed up here and they accepted you. Maybe you could try that elsewhere. Right.
So why does the Meyer helmet kill Ashildr? I'm not sure I picked that up.
The doctor says it drains her like a battery. But that's just his after the fact explanation, that it used her up like a battery. And And, okay, if you want to just kill somebody, I guess that's an okay after-the-fact explanation as any, but you should have set it up ahead of time.
Right.
She should have known the dangers of putting that thing on. You can take care of that in a couple of lines of dialogue.
You create some extra drama there where you're like, she's willing to take the risk and make the sacrifice, et cetera, but they don't even bother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when he heals her, gives her the Meyer first aid kit, which is going to make her functionally immortal, he also gives her a second dose and says, this is for someone she wants.
Whoever she chooses.
Right. Because as he knows, when you're immortal, everyone you love eventually dies. So, and in fact, he says immortality isn't living forever. It's watching everyone else die all the time.
Yeah, except that's not true. For him, because he's from Gallifrey.
Yeah.
All the Time Lords on Gallifrey are the same as him. He's lived for a couple thousand years, but so have all of his friends. It's only by leaving Gallifrey that you have to watch people die.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And certainly she's going... Well, I want to watch in the next one, because I don't remember the first time I watched it, why she never uses the second dose, or...
I believe she does.
Does she?
Yeah,
okay.
She meets someone.
Okay. We should have saved that for Clara.
I was wondering, it's like, if I'm Clara and that end scene and he's explaining, I think I may have made her immortal, she wants to be the Doctor now.
Yeah.
It's like, can I get one of those too? Did you think about doing that for someone who's your actual companion?
Right. Well, maybe the Doctor recognizes how bad that could be, because, we'll find out the human brain isn't designed to hold those many memories and some other nonsense that they're going to peddle at us. But I could see him kind of thinking that, but they never say it. Like they don't say it in here or there. He does say that one day he will run from Clara's eyes because the memory of so much pain of losing people will make it hurt so much.
Which is setting up his forgetting her. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So that's what we'll get at the end of this season. And then we also get the payoff of the hybrid prophecy that got set up earlier, where he realizes that Ashildr is now a human alien hybrid.
Right, and of two warrior races, humans and Meyer.
Right.
So where did they set up the Meyer prophecy earlier? Because I don't
hybrid
recall
prophecy?
it. Yeah. I mean, I know when they pay it off, but when did they set it up? Because I don't remember it. When I first watched this series when it was coming out, after a certain number of weeks, it seemed like fans were just noticing mentions of hybrids in the show. But there wasn't a upfront, there is this ancient Gallifreyan prophecy of a hybrid
I thought that was in the first episode of the season, but I'm going to have to...
If it was, I don't remember it, and I don't remember it from when it was on the air. Because it seemed to me that it was just a slow-rolling collection of references to hybrids that fans eventually twigged to, and then they told us the prophecy at the end of the series, right before they paid it off. Right.
So this says, according to the TARDIS Wiki, Davros attempted to transform some of his Daleks into Time Lord hybrids,
right?
Intending to fulfill an ancient Gallifreyan prophecy.
That's right. Okay, I remember that now.
Right. So that was in the Witch's Familiar. So
it didn't strike me as this is our season arc, though. It was, so I think that's why I didn't.
Right.
I wasn't tracking it during the course of the series, because it seemed like a one-off line from Davros and not something they were setting up a season arc. It wasn't like the Cracks in Time or anything like that. It seemed to me more like Bad Wolf.
Right.
Where it got introduced slowly and you didn't realize it was anything for a long time.
Right. And eventually, I mean, I don't know that they ever definitively say that Ashildr/me is the hybrid, because at some point they also throw out the theory that maybe the Doctor and Clara together are a hybrid.
And that seems to have been Stephen Moffat's intention.
Is to make it ambiguous.
Not just to make it ambiguous, but to make it more centered on the Doctor.
I see. Yeah. All right, so that's all I think I have for this one. Jimmy, do you have any other notes on this?
No. No, I think that's it. We didn't really talk about the opening sequence where we joined the Doctor and Clara in media res with him finishing some mission, a dramatic moment that we don't know what the mission is, and Clara's in a spacesuit flying around with something called a love sprite, which is apparently a kind of spider that sucks your brain out through your mouth in her suit. And it's interesting to see sort of the final moments of an adventure that we otherwise never see, and we only hear them summarize it. But it's irrelevant to this episode. It's just thrown in there as a dramatic opening and filler. Right.
There are a couple of funny lines in there where he's like, it's crawling up. She's like, it's halfway up my leg. Don't worry, it's just hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, that is the problem. That is the central problem. And then he's, can you identify a nebula sort of wing shade to Big Green at the end? Yes, I can. Great. I've seen it too. I wondered where that was. It's not really relevant. He's just distracting her, obviously, from whatever's going on.
Well, I think he's also, because he quizzes her about what she's seeing in terms of stars and nebula.
Yeah.
And he's really figuring out where she is so he can beam the TARDIS around her.
Right.
And that's how he saves her. But he's not letting on that that's what he's doing.
Yes. And then we do get the classic TARDIS separation, because if the TARDIS had been in the village, that would have been an obvious solution, is herd everybody into the TARDIS, go away for a while. And, the Mire won't be able to battle them. But so we separate them from the TARDIS for quite
2 days
distant.
away.
Yeah, it was quite distant, for like England to Denmark or something. So, all right. So that is that. I think that's it for this episode. We would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Jacob H., Jody S., Sonia C., Regina C., and Brian B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. What did you think of this 12th Doctor story, The Girl Who Died? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch the Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should subscribe and make sure to hit the bell to get notifications when a new episode shows up there. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 4th Doctor story, The Face of Evil. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
It's true, the evil one eats babies.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest, and remember, a good death is the best anyone can hope for.